Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, family. How are you? I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope all of you are having a beautiful Monday. As you know, the temperature is a little warm around the country. I would suggest that you take advantage of this good weather wherever you are. Take advantage of the good weather. Go for a walk. Take your family for a walk and all those things. You know, for the last several weeks, possibly several months, I kind of been on a bender, really looking at some of the aspects of what affects quality of life here in America. When I say quality of life, I mean quality of life as a result of moral decisions, correctness, uh, dealing with issues of institutional injustice, foundational injustice, not just for African Americans, but for society as a whole. We have come to a point, brothers and sisters, where there's saturation. I myself honestly have gotten tired of talking about it because it's just talking about it. Speaking to the masses, whether it's one person or whether it's a million people, is ineffective. In the end, we're not able to move the needle on social justice. I call this show, brothers and sisters, the Un-American States of America. The Un-American States of America. In that the antithetical activity and behavior of certain groups, hate groups, supremacist groups, politicians have framed the picture, brothers and sisters, that to react, that to have emotional intelligence about things that are being done to you and around you somehow are un-American. That in itself, brothers and sisters, is un-American. To not question power, to not question the quest for justice, to not question equality in of itself, brothers and sisters, is a total anathema of how America was built. You know, and I'll lay this out here as we move on in this piece. And I just want to say, hey, listen, I hope you guys don't mind. I just went on ahead and just did a pre-recorded show, just largely due to the fact that I'm traveling and this will happen every once in a while. So forgive your brother for today, okay? But the larger point of what I'm saying is it's now become endemic of American politics, an endemic of religious institutions who've now bowed down to the fact that we are, for lack of a better word, slaves, conformists to the herd. When I say the herd, I have to say this, the whole sentence. It is the wisdom of the herd. Now, the wisdom of the herd has two meanings to me. One is a herd, or the wisdom of the crowds. We could say the herd, but the wisdom of the crowds. That we see something and we go along with it because it has some type of connection to us. It has some type of intellectual reality or balance that we say that's what it is. And it just happens to be something that goes along with that. Now, on the other side, brothers and sisters, is this other piece. The other piece is, I say, the wisdom of the herd. And that is not just the herd like the cattle, but it's the H-E-A-R-D. That's the wisdom of the herd. Now, this is a very dangerous concept here because it's not just who's hearing, but who's talking, who's speaking, who's putting the information out, and through what filter. We talk about platforms all the time. You know, one of the breakdowns of journalism these days is that a journalist's story can be totally overshadowed by the fact that a person has more views on what they're talking about. Not different views, not diverse views, but myopic views. That people say, hey, so-and-so said it and I'm going with that. There's no responsibility, accountability for who said it, how it was said it, context, anything like that. It is the rush to get ideas, opinions, and emotions to the marketplace. We're going to be talking about that today because I believe, brothers and sisters, that we're at I want to say crisis point, but we are heading into the midterm elections. I'll explain more when we come back. This is Preacher Moss, the Shout Out Show. See you in a minute. And before we continue on, to make sure I give a shout out to my Shout Out Show family, our consultant producer, Sister Satana, Clifford Moss Sr., Mary Moss, Maxine Bethel Cade, the Samuels family. I want to give a shout out to Altar Rashid, Sister Satana, JT, Sister Ika, Sister Naima. I can go on and on, Sister Ree. We have Sister Chaudhry. We have all kind of people that are coming on the show. But Salahuddin, we have everybody fight the power. We have everybody coming on the show. But today, like I said, this is a pre-record. And I would hope that you tune into this. I recently had a conversation with a religious scholar. And we questioned the balance of how men, human beings, have learned to, in many regards, deflect the responsibility that comes along with power and proper application of power. Let me tell you what I mean. The pursuit for a lot of politicians is to get power, and the greater pursuit is to get more power. It becomes a bit of a situation, a scenario, and almost a phobia, if you will, like a mental illness, that for me to have more power or the most power, then that requires somebody not to have power. Or I have to create a situation where you're not deserving of power. We talked earlier, I don't know, a month or so ago about zero-sum relationships. Zero-sum relationships, for those of you who did not see it or weren't part of that particular conversation, is the fact that in a zero-sum relationship, for this person to have 10 of something, if this person has one, they don't want them to have that one. It means that they should have 11. And that type of thinking, brothers and sisters, has formulated. We recently had a vote on an infrastructure bill, which is very interesting. Because the one thing the media did was they put out the amount of Democrats that didn't vote for the infrastructure bill, and they put out the Republicans who did vote for the infrastructure bill. Now, in any other time, brothers and sisters, listen to me. An infrastructure bill is good. It creates jobs. It increases commerce for equipment. It gives people time cards to log in, log out, and overall, it helps the infrastructure. But it was interesting that the Democrats, not the one that were castigated, it was the Republicans that voted for this bill, and they were immediately targeted for the 2022 election. Now, this is not to get on politics. This is not to get on politics, because that's not politics. That is punitive action against people because they didn't think the way or react the way you wanted to think. You wanted them to react. Let me say this carefully. This is people that you're trying to punish because they didn't think or react, or let's throw it out there. They did not submit to the way that you wanted them to submit. Therein, our title today is The Un-American States of America. The first un-American state of America is that we're slowly going to a space where people think that racism has a home for organic growth of America. Let me say that again. That people believe that racism has a home, a place, a purpose in organic growth of America. More and more each day, brothers and sisters, the idea of folks having rights as opposed to being granted rights becomes the bargain. That's the bargain now. We find ourselves just like the stock market. When the stock market crashed, everybody lost money, and when it rose 250 points, everybody was happy, but they didn't understand it had dropped 500. You're celebrating 250 points. It needs to go to another 250 points just to break even. In America now, we're having the same thing. I've said this before, in the African American community, Latino community, the Native American community knows it best, that we're fighting over the same real estate. We're fighting over the same real estate. We're fighting over voting again. We're fighting over land rights again. We're fighting for access to education again. These are meant, brothers and sisters, to stymie mobility. to stymie cultural and community mobility. Even more so than stymie cultural mobility, it's meant to fatigue it, to make you think that as hard as you're going to work, it's not gonna happen. You won't have the level of success that you think or you originally envisioned. And so therefore you move into, I want to say, almost a level of depression, a sadness, a hopelessness. That's number one, un-American state of America. The number two un-American state of America is that we have now, brothers and sisters, developed a modality, an example, and a distribution model for hopelessness here in the United States. I've been looking more and more and more away from the politics of things that have been done with law. And I will refer to critical race theory at some point in time through here, because it's important to understand what that is. But we now have, brothers and sisters, people who are normally comfortable in a seat being oppressors find themselves oppressed and find themselves being compared to the group that basically they've been comparing themselves all along. And life was, as long as I'm not doing as bad as that group, I'm doing good. Now they find themselves doing as bad as that group. COVID was a lot of things, a lot of loss of life, a lot of loss of good health, a lot of loss of resources. But the one thing that COVID was honest. The data on COVID never changed. The things that we're doing now were the things we should have been doing at the beginning. Other countries around the world had much better protocols of how to deal with COVID. Even in China, where it broke out, China did not lose over 700,000 people due to COVID. People say, well, the communist country, that wasn't it. They were an active country. They knew the merits and the scope of what was going on, and they shut down the aspect of Wuhan. In the United States, brothers and sisters, we are so adverse, and I want to lay this out. We're so adverse to people asking questions about the general good of everybody that we find ourselves in these weird corners and cubby holes. Nobody wants to say they're wrong, but nobody can say that they're right. Nobody has the courage in some regards to stand up and say, I made a mistake for the greater good, for the welfare of others other than their particular group that supports them, or their political backers, or the constituents. Yeah. One thing I say about COVID didn't have a political party, it didn't have a socioeconomic income that they dealt with, didn't have a certain amount of advanced degrees. It had nothing. It had the base of reminding us that at some point in time, we're all going to die. We're all going to be out of here. And when I say out of here, what I mean, brothers and sisters, is that we're going to be irrelevant. And that's what death does. It makes you irrelevant in some regards. And the only thing that keeps you relevant is your character and how you stood up and looked at humanity and say yes, no, no, yes, and you sacrifice for the goodness of others. And I don't mean people being stars or heroes. I'm talking about fathers who were fathers, mothers who were mothers, uncles that looked out for their nephews, and so on and so on and so on. And even then, COVID, with the strength that it had, could not break this cycle of selfishness, a cycle of lies, a cycle of misinformation. It could not do it. And people really, really found themselves trying to fight COVID. The fact of the matter is, if you're not vaccinated, there's a good chance you could wind up sick or you could die. The facts are the facts. Yet and still, we continue to have people trying to tell us that it's raining on a sunny day, that we're not in our right minds, that Monday is not Monday and Tuesday is not Tuesday and 1 + 1 is not 2. You now have folks that are so disillusioned. And let me tell you where this disillusionment comes from. It comes from the fact when you have no more use for reality, when you go into those quiet corners of your mind and your life, you find that you are useless, that you are hopeless. And the only way that you can have gravitas or meaning is to continue turning out those feelings in other people. The third, brothers, the third un-American state of America is that people, brothers and sisters, have developed a marketplace for misery. For misery. The old quote for journalism is, if it bleeds, it leads. If it bleeds, it leads. It would be today that there's a pain economy in our journalism. There's a pain economy in social media. There's a voyeuristic presence that we have to look at other people's lives and not our own. That somehow, somewhere, we are willing to take a picture and infer that that picture is reality that we want to be a part of. I'm not calling out rappers or people who have money or people who have big cars or people who have all these views and stuff like that. God bless you. If people like you, good. And if you're doing good things, good. And if you earn their respect, good. But for the people you didn't earn their respect, you earned their like, it's a problem. You're not helping the overall aspect of how we develop agency in terms of being a community. Therein, the social media market, the social media world is built upon competition, not community. And that being said, brothers and sisters, let me throw this out. These false communities are not hinged on the overall aspirations, the overall complexity and complexion of community. It's one person. It's two people. And we move ourselves into these spaces, and now you have another recreation of what I call the wisdom of the crowd. Years ago, we used to have commercials, and we trusted the actors who told us use Colgate toothpaste or American Express, call Malden, don't leave home without it. And we trusted Carl Malden because in his TV show, he was a police officer, and we trusted him. Think about that. We trusted him because he was a police officer and he had an American Express card. God, what were we thinking? It was the 70s. But here we are. A referendum came back not to defund the police, in spite of everything that was being seen. And in some regards, I do agree with not defunding the police because I'm like, you have to address the Constitution, the legality of how people are able to do things. The fourth one for the un-American states of America is the assault on critical race theory. The assault on critical race theory, brothers and sisters, is a desperate attempt to normalize bad precedent, normalize the keeping of power, even though people are not earning it, and it's not effective. If you have power and you're effective with it, and the community recognizes that, that's not an issue. But you have power and it's in a vacuum, and it's only self-serving to you and a certain amount of people, then that is a problem. We had an election turn in Virginia on the fact that people didn't know what critical race theory was. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I've been on critical race theory since the early 90s. And what it did for me, brothers and sisters, And I would encourage everybody to get the book on critical race theory by Richard Delgado, and I forgot the other author. But it let people know that the laws that have been pre-existing have to be examined. And there's nothing wrong with examining the pre-existing laws to see if they make sense. That's it. Why can't we look at the laws that affect our lives, that affect our children, that affect our ability to move different places? You have laws that are applicable to be a doctor or engineer. Why not laws that establish who I am as a person, as an identity? You see, because the amnesia that's going on right now is largely due to the fact that people don't want to own up to the fact that these laws, as stated by the critical race theory and investigated, these laws that have been on the books for years are indeed themselves un-American. That these laws that cause oppression and hold on to discrimination and prejudice to only be broken by the people that they were meant to affect negatively, in and of itself stipulates that these people are the ones who are the actual Americans. And those that propagate that these laws are okay or satisfactory or have meaning are in fact un-American. And they're the bedrock of this country. The laws for voting. Why are we still having laws for voting? Because people realized that they couldn't hold on to an advantage if the laws were, oh my God, fair. Just like education, just like employment, just like jobs, just like buying property, just like finance. The laws that have been on the books have indeed been un-American, and that people fought and continue to fight stipulates that this is what America is built on. Not the politics of fear, not the politics of retribution. I will give a shout out to Miss Liz Cheney because she stood up and said, this is not America. And I believe more and more people need to stand up and say, this is not America. And let me be very, very clear. Black people, Latinos, Native Americans, women, you need to sit down. We need to sit down. We've been yelling this out. What we need to do is hold up a mirror and say, this is the America that you really want. This is the America that you really want. The un-America. Show them the un-America in the mirror. Take a hammer and break that mirror and let them know you'll never have it. Because there's always going to be the authentic American that does pursue truth, justice, and liberty. And they don't look for it. They don't look for your permission. They don't look for your okay or your approval. Nobody is standing waiting for you to open the door or give a green light for us to be great. If these Americans that I'm talking about were not great in their spaces, we're not courageous in their spaces, then I would say America in and of itself will be a third world country with third world century, with third world citizens and third world existence. Not talking about what we classify as third world countries. I'm talking about a third world existence. And that's what we move into now. So the question, brothers and sisters, is how, in some regards, how can we make the change? How can we switch it? I'm going to be talking about that this week. Blue Ocean strategies to get the un-America part back to Americans, to begin to come up with new paradigms and new strategies, as opposed to doing my rants like I do every once in a while. I really, really want to have a conversation about strategically, how do we address these people? How do we address these people if it were not for the law that they desperately cling to? We don't know where they were. They literally, I believe these laws are so embedded in American existence, in American society, that folks refuse to acknowledge that this is where it comes from. I'll give you a point. I see politicians. I see the Joe Bidens. I see the Lindsey Grahams. I see the Mike McConnells. I see all these people, white men and women. Has anybody ever done a review? How did you vote back in 1960 or 65 or 70 for that matter? How did your vote reflect your views on African Americans and Latinos and Native American land rights? How did you vote, brothers and sisters? And the critical question is, if you voted against those things, if you voted against laws to make sure that these people couldn't fully express their American rights as Americans, tell me why. And then, after you tell me why, tell me what changed your mind. What got in your chest and expanded your heart whereby, oh, they can have that. And I'm saying this too, brothers and sisters, not to be coy. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't come from an open heart. It came from pressure. It came from pressure. It came from the fact that you could lose power by trying to hold on to this power. And that you gave a little bit meant that down the road, you're going to take a lot more. Zero sum. I'll add this too. That the model that I'm thinking now, brothers and sisters, is a bit of a radical model. Meaning that we create opportunities in space for people to develop their own law. When I say their own law, we're talking about codes, living by codes, having honor agreements, honor amongst us, that somehow circumvents this whole political process. And that we establish a society, if you will, that's built on these codes and agreed upon things. And the conversation, the larger conversations, that we have dialogue where we agree on these things and have buy-in. If you're looking at me thinking, hey, this is crazy, it already happened before. That was the civil rights movement. It already happened before. Nation of Islam, Ahmadiyya movement, SCLC, SNCC. It already happened before, brothers and sisters. But to recreate it now gives us quite the quandary. It's quite a conundrum, brothers and sisters, because it's going to require us to remove ourselves or detach ourselves from a faulty system and have faith that we move to one another, that we can create a new model. In speech and language, I teach my clients this concept called persuasive presentation. I use it as a comedian. I mind my comedic act with certain words and certain aspects of an act, certain concepts, whereby when the show is over, I have a high probability that they will remember some things from my show. Whether it's the repetition of an idea or strategic placement of an idea, they will remember things from the show. And when they tell other folks, I won't be in their presence, but they will speak about me in a positive manner regarding my comedy set, regarding my behavior, regarding my intellect, in some regards, my religiosity, my own piety, how I treated them. So, brothers and sisters, to remove the un-American states of America, we have to have a stated purpose for America. Meaning that we have to repurpose the things that have made us great in spite of everything, in spite of some of our biggest challenges, the things that made us great and kept us centered and kept us focused. Those are the things that I believe, honestly, we need to focus on now. All right. So look, You guys been great. Um, like I said, this is the shout out show pre-recorded version. Hope you guys liked it. I have to go up here now and do my ad. So, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna say this, and I hope you roll with me. Listen, I'm gonna give a shout out to our sponsors. Of course, we're gonna give a shout out to BeFinancialIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. You want to make sure that you are checking them out. If you don't want to go to the website, call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. Check them out. Also, if you're thinking about getting a quality Islamic graduate education at graduate level and a doctoral level, you want to check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Okay, again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Don't sleep on it. Okay, so listen, I'm gonna get out of here. Wish me luck. I have a lecture tomorrow. I hope to see all of you tomorrow on the live space. If not, don't fret. I look. I still love you. And I appreciate your patience in this situation. Thank you guys so much. God bless you. Stay blessed and hug somebody, love somebody. I'm your brother Preacher Moss. This is the Shadow Show. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.